Okay, welcome to part 2 of this review of the Bachmann Spectrum 440 SAL number 106. So, throughout this part of the video is where we're going to be covering all the locomotive sound functions and everything, and how beautifully this engine will run. So, all I gotta do is activate the switch here on the Easy Command Control Center, and just listen how everything comes to life. And there you got it. The engine is now alive. So now I've just activated function mode on this engine. So while this engine is still idle and sitting still, let's go over some sounds. Number 1 is bell. Number 2 is long whistle. Number 3 is short whistle. Number 4, as usual, is steam release. And normally, on my other Bachmann sound-equipped engines, there would be no sound functions on the rest of the numbers, but there definitely is. So, moving on to number 5, that would be the sound of the dynamo. Number 6, we got a water stop. You can hear the sound of the water hatch opening up and the water pouring in. Then you press the button again, and that'll finish it up. Okay, and number 7 is the coupler clank. And number 8, that usually mutes it. And then finally for number 10, the headlight. So yeah, different color headlight, yellow and gold and everything like that. So just absolutely wonderful and everything. So that'll do it for all the idle sounds. So let's get to the movement of this locomotive. So that is kind of correct, where it's 4 chucks per revolution of the wheel. Now for the beautiful view that most of you rail foamers are waiting for, to see it from on the far side of this oval and everything. Kind of looks like it's running through a field. Alright, so as the train gets closer, I'm gonna play y'all a grade crossing. Absolutely gorgeous engine. Alright, so as this engine gets closer, we're gonna bring it to a stop and listen to what happens. That's right, you'll hear the brakes squealing. A little bit more of that action as I slow it down a little bit more. And then stop it right there. Now that I've stopped it, you can also hear more sounds, like the fireman is shoveling coal into the fire. And all sorts of stuff like that. Sounds like a lot of activity going on with a real steam locomotive. Sound of my cuckoo clock. And you can still hear more sounds, like more work and everything. So beautiful idle sounds. But before we get to the conclusion of this video and everything, as the idle sounds go on, forgot to point out another idle sound, that when you switch directions, you gotta throw a lever in forward and reverse, which in normal modern train talk, we call that a reverser, but in an engine, we call it the Johnson bar. So when I switch directions of this engine, you'd hear the engineer throw the Johnson bar in forward and reverse. Listen very carefully as I switch directions. I couldn't hear that very well. I hope the audio picked it up. I think I'm going to play that sound one more time. There we go. And also, you could also see as I threw the engine in reverse, headlight went out, throwing it back on forwards. That brings the light back on. So listen to this. That's the steam. So it really sounds like this engine is beautifully sitting idle. So without further ado, we're going to get to the conclusion as I cover all the positives and negatives about this locomotive. Okay, time to conclude this video with all the positives and negatives I have about this engine. So, gonna start with the positives. The positives about this locomotive is that I love how crispy colored black it is and everything, with the white stripes running the length of the locomotive and tender, and also running the length of the cowcatcher and everything. So other than that, it's still a very beautiful locomotive. Definitely different compared to my other Bachmann sound-equipped engines, because like I said, the other Bachmann sound-equipped engines don't have any cab figures, but this one does. And the other positives is that definitely there's a lot more sounds involved in this engine than there is on the other ones. So that pretty much covers the positives. So the negatives about this engine you weren't able to see, but as I was moving it and the slowest motion and everything, you would have noticed for sure that only at that time correctly the train definitely goes 4 chuffs per revolution of the wheel, but as I cranked the volts up a little bit more by then, eventually the chuff and the revolution of the wheel doesn't seem to connect at all. As I move the train forward, the wheels spin around a lot more faster than the sound of chuffing and everything. And I've also heard that this engine is not meant to pull very long trains at all, because if you get up to 8 or 10 cars behind this engine, you'll start experiencing a little bit of some wheel slippage and everything. So try to connect a smaller train to this engine, whatever you do. And I'm sure it would help if you had a double header with another engine if you wanted to pull a longer train, because after all, that's what double headers are all about, doing it with steam or diesels and everything. So that covers all the positives and negatives, and definitely we conclude this video on everything to do with the little engine that could and everything. And I just love how this engine has real strings connected to the whistle and the bell like that would go inside the cab, where the engineer toots the whistle and the fireman gives the bell a ring and everything. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this review all the way around. So thank you very much for watching, and from the St. Mary's Railroad, we will see you on the rails. You didn't think I was going to let you leave without this, didn't you? Thank you for watching.